that Gale or Gal episode. Spoiler alert if you haven't seen Foundation episode 5. I'm Al, this is the Geek in Review. Let's get to it. Now we're finally picking up after the events of the second episode where Harry died, but let's get into it. Now we did see a little bit of where she came from in the first episode. It was a sort of water planet, and we get to see a whole lot more here than we ever done in the books. The backstory of the character and where they came from isn't really explored, and the culture isn't really touched on at all. We do find out that her people are facing their own calamity, so we can see pretty clearly where the setup is going. Now I've mentioned this in my previous videos, check them out if you haven't done it already, that they are mixing quite a bit of the religious elements into the story that isn't really focused on or really in the books at all, and this is certainly present in the Gal backstory. Basically, our planet is facing, I think by the looks of it, they don't say exactly what it is, but it appears to be some sort of climate change or climate devastation. It is an ocean planet. There doesn't appear to be any real land because all the people live in is these sort of huts and cabins. It looks like if you've ever seen those pictures or you've been to Thailand or Malaysia or places like that. Not really that advanced considering how far it is in the future, but we do find out that these are quite, in terms of people of the Empire, backwards. They believe in gods and all the sort of stuff that goes with that, good and bad, and it is a little bit more focused on the bad here. Because religion and science don't get on, and we know that Gal's a mathematician, so it does appear that there has been some sort of, I wouldn't say war, but definitely conflict between religion and science here, because Gal can see what's happening with her people, and the people know themselves, but everyone, including her mother and father, seem to think that praying and indeed sacrificing people to the gods is going to solve this climate problem that they're going to be facing in the next few years. Now, life on this planet doesn't appear to be great if you want to learn anything. Books are being destroyed, which is never really a good thing. Gale basically knows that she's right and that science is right, but she goes along with her people at the start because of their beliefs, and it's too hard to go against them. Our people are slowly dying. They drown a guy using rocks and his own books, because this is the guy that believes that science is going to save their planet, or at very least this settlement. And after watching the execution, Gal knows that she has to try and save the colony or the settlement any way that she can. And this is, for me, is where this episode kind of go off the rails. Although it's been a few episodes since we've seen her, we know how smart she is, because we know that she's the only person that really had a grasp on Harry's work when he was on trial in episode 1. She knows that her people are facing calamity, similar to how Harry knows that the Empire is going to fall, and of course we know that their stories are going to tie together. So I don't really get what the setup of this episode is, because it's showing us events that we sort of know that have already happened. There's a scene later on in the episode that does pick up after the events of episode 2, where she gets picked up by a spaceship and she has to save herself, or not save herself, but work out where she's going through her own intelligence. And yeah, I just think we didn't really need to see this. This was just to remind us who she was, because we haven't really seen her in 2 episodes. And I can understand this because people would have forgotten the storyline. There hasn't been that much focus on Harry or the events of Harry's death since the second episode. But anyway, this whole, or half this episode, is about the setup to get her to Trantor, which I think is totally pointless because we've already seen her arrive in Trantor in episode 1. Our parents aren't happy about her decision to leave, especially her dad, so it does reframe that scene from when he was hugging her at the start of episode 1 and she's leaving her planet to go to Trantor and meet Harry. But picking up from episode 2, she wakes up being picked up by a ship in the escape pod, still covered in Harry's blood, and the ship does appear to be entirely automated. Now, she finds out that she's been in cryosleep for about 34 years, which in terms of the timeline puts her exactly where Terminus is that we've seen in the last few episodes. Now, although the ship is totally automated and she's stranded on board there, she can't really change the direction or get any information on where she's going. She does manage to look up the history and finds out what happened after Harry died. Ra's was put on trial and Gale was believed to be a co-accused, although they didn't really highlight on her escape or the fact that people were looking for her. That was not mentioned, which I thought was very odd. Does Ra's reveal the reason that he killed Harry? Sadly not. Now, after the trial, he does decide to get executed because he doesn't deny anything, he completely admits it. But before they eject him out into space, he sort of hints that what he's done was part of Harry's plan. Which I think is interesting because Harry did seem shocked when he died, but maybe Ra's wasn't interpreting Harry's data correctly, or he was interpreting it correctly and he believed that Harry was wrong. Now that they've killed the character of Ra's, we're probably going to get this in flashback at some point. It does mention the relationship between Ra's and Harry, which was totally different in the books, but they had a lot more time to expand on it. Again, I'm going to be doing a video about some of the differences between the books and the episode, so if you do want to keep an eye out on that and watch that video when it comes out, do subscribe to the channel and leave a like on this video as well. She does manage to work out where she's going and finds out that she's going to Harry Seldon's home world, no less. And given the fact that she's co-accused in his murder, she's not too desperate to arrive there, even after 35 years. But this isn't fully a Gale episode. We do get the pick up from the story on Terminus, which I have to say, I'm not really loving the Terminus stuff so far. This show does have a magnificent budget and magnificent special effects, but this sort of real world stuff on Terminus does feel a bit cheap looking. They try and hide it with some clever direction and edits, and it does work quite well, but in terms of what they were doing on Trantor, and I know the colony and everything is just getting established on Terminus, it just, I don't know, it doesn't feel exciting to me, or at least not as exciting as other aspects of the show so far. But the colony is managing to hold off the Anacreons with the shield, although they do seem pretty confident that they're going to be able to take it down. An Imperial ship does arrive, much to the colonists' disbelief, because again, it's been about 10 or 20 years since they've heard from them, and the Anacreons disabled the satellite that could let them communicate with Trantor. And now, some of the encyclopedias do think that this was part of Harry's plan. Personally, I don't think so. It does seem a little bit too detailed. I don't think he'd be able to predict that Anacreons would land on the planet and that the Imperial ship would show up to help them, but again, you never know. But the captain of the fleet wants to meet the Huntress, leader that they captured in the last episode, and Salvor doesn't really want her exposed anywhere. She doesn't really want her leaving where she is. She thinks it's some sort of trap, or there's going to be some sort of play, and she's right. As soon as the Huntress gets to the control room, she's got a sort of exploding EMP eye. Sadly, just like Blofeld in the last James Bond film, if you've seen No Time to Die. And it knocks out the controls in the control room and the energy shield, so the Anacreons are able to attack the colony. So the Imperial ship tries to land and defend them, but the Anacreons seemed like they were anticipating the arrival, or at least hoping for the arrival of this ship. Now, I did think that they were going to damage it and then use it as a Trojan horse, but after they shoot it down, I mean, as I just said, the CGI shots in this show are epic. That was absolutely amazing. It looked absolutely brilliant. So I can't see them using the ship to sort of Trojan horse the Empire or Trantor, unless they're going to take elements from it and use it. We don't really know too much about how technology in this world works, but these guys certainly seem to have a long-term plan. What's interesting is we find out the Anacreons' motivations for attacking the colony, because the Foundation has sort of kept themselves to themselves, and that's exactly what they're supposed to do. They're supposed to wait until one of these crises happens so they can step in, or at least try and avert the crisis beforehand. So basically the attack on Anacrea, because they were blamed for the Starbridge destruction, they see that Harry caused the destruction of their planet because he put the idea in the Empire's head that the fall was going to happen, and this is a sort of domino effect that Harry and his work has led to the attack on Anacrea. So they wanted to repay the favour on Terminus. So I don't think this is part of Harry's plan. It seems to be a sort of self-fulfilling prophecy. We still don't know what's in the vault yet, and there could all be answers here. But this is certainly one element that I think is very interesting, is what if there are other people out there interpreting Harry's work, or just blaming Harry for shit that's going to happen to themselves or their planet. Because Seldon has taken on this sort of iconic figure, and I've said it before that the Foundation and Psycho history has sort of taken on a religious following, or a sort of cult following. So we could see sort of divergent branches of the Foundation, or divergent branches of people interpreting Psycho history or Harry's work. I don't think they're going to go down that road too soon. I think this season is just setting up for the big reveal of the vault. We do get a hint that, or a clear pretty much indication that Harry's coming back, because on the ship, just before she lands on the planet, Gale notices blood everywhere. Then all of a sudden Harry Seldon's there, but he's sort of vibrating. So this is probably a hologram, because in the books that's how Harry appears. Whether he's planned all this or whether he's planned it all with Raish, it does seem to look as if it's going that way, because the automated ship was only keyed to respond to Raish and didn't really seem to care about Gale or the fact that she was on board, so this doesn't seem to have been pre-planned, or at least not anticipated that she'd be the sole survivor on the ship. But all in all, I think this has been the slowest episode in the series. I know a few people have complained about episodes 3 and 4 and the pace. I thought they were pretty good, but reminders of how smart she is. They could have just done the whole story on the ship and that would have been fine. I don't think they're really going to expand on the religious elements of her people, because they weren't technologically advanced enough, unless the Empire or someone else decides to wipe them out. But I hope they're not going to do that, because if we start focusing on everyone's individual backstory, it's going to take away from the grander plan. And that's what the Foundation is. It's a huge grand plan, and that's how psychohistory works. But as always, let me know what you think in the comments.